Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Jones. Today we're studying Matthew chapter 21. Let's get started.
Okay, so the chapter starts with the triumphant entry of Jesus. This is where Jesus sends his disciples ahead. He has them, he does this twice, remember? So he sends his disciples ahead to prepare the upper room and, everything's kind of done. And then he sends his disciples ahead also when he's preparing for the triumphant entry. And so where he sends his disciples to get ready for the Lord's Supper, a room is ready. They find a specific guy. The guy leads them to the spot. Here they go and they find a donkey. So we got Jesus working supernaturally behind the scenes to set everything up. Now, there's a ton we could talk about there, but here's the thing. Sunday morning, we're going to talk about the triumphant entry. Even we're going to pass out palm branches to all the kids who want them and wave them in the sanctuary. So we're going to save all that for Sunday. Let's look into the rest of this. So the other part of this is that in this chapter, we have got a clear direction toward the cross. So now we find Jesus, who the Son of God, traveling in his ministry, and he's weaving through he's weaving through politics and people and problems and the religious leaders coming after it. He is having to navigate a lot, and every step he takes gets him closer and closer to the cross, and he knows it. Now, there's an interesting point here. Are you going to talk about the tree, or can I?
You can.
Okay, so there's an interesting story in here where Jesus walks by a tree. And he's hungry, and he wants some figs off of the tree. And he goes to pick some figs off the tree, and there's no fruit on the tree. And he gets mad, and he curses the fig tree, and it withers up, and the disciples are like, "Good grief, what just happened?" All right. So John's question was, what's that all about? Because the attitude where Jesus gets angry enough to curse something so that it withers up, that's not really the attitude we see of Jesus in anything else that we read. And so it's so uncharacteristic of Jesus, it stands out to us. And then poor John, he's got a soft heart. He said, well, what'd that poor tree do? Okay, so you got to remember what's happening. So in this same chapter, Jesus went to the temple, and inside the temple, what are they doing?
Bad things.
Bad things. They're buying and selling what? Do you remember?
The money.
They're changing out money. They're buying sacrifices. And whereas that started as a way of being convenient for pilgrims coming into the city to be able to buy their stuff and go ahead and go through worship, when that became popular, then those who sold those things began to hike up the prices. It would be like if you and I went to a ball game. Okay, we can stop at the gas station and get a Coke relatively cheap. We can get it even cheaper if we just drink one at the house. That's why Daddy always says we got food at the house, all right? But if you get it at the gas station, it's a little bit more, but not much. But that same Coke at a ball game is going to cost you at the gas station, maybe $2. At the ball game, $300 for a Coke, right? So imagine the inflation inside the temple. Now, when you went to the temple, they were busy. They were talking about, here's your sacrifice, here's your stuff. And so the temple was super busy, but were they doing anything godly? Mm-mm. So inside there's a lot of life, a lot of busyness, but no fruit, right? In comes the tree. So Jesus goes to the tree. The tree has leaves. It's green. It's luscious. It's beautiful. It looks like it's got a lot of life. But what does it not have? Fruit. And Jesus is frustrated to a point where he curses the fig tree. Now, where's his frustration? He's using this as a symbol, as a metaphor. He says, Jerusalem is a lot like this tree. Looks like it's got a lot going on, but there's no fruit. Now, take that and fast forward to the end of the story. At the end of this chapter, Jesus tells a story about a man who builds a vineyard and he walls it in and he leases it out and he sends worker after worker after worker. And then toward the end of it, he sends somebody to go, gather. He sends his own son. They kill his son. That whole story is the story from Exodus to the cross. Jesus put them in a good land. God put them in a good land, in the promised land. He gave them everything. He sent them prophet after prophet after prophet. Finally, they're not respecting the prophets. He sends his own son. And what do? They say, we're taking over. We're killing him. Then Jesus asked the question. He says, what do you think they're going to do with these people? And they said, they're gonna throw them out, they're gonna kill them, and they're gonna give it to somebody else. And Jesus goes, all right. And now they're thinking about the fig tree, and they're going, this is when it ends with, now the chief priests and the Pharisees heard these parables. They perceived that he was speaking about them. That's what's going on. So, looks like life, but no fruit, bad news. All right, what you got?
All right, so my takeaway comes from the part where everybody's worshiping Jesus and they're like, yippee yay. And so it specifically the part where the Pharisees are kind of getting really, really mad because they're like, hey, he's not the Son of God. He needs to leave. And so, but they're like, everybody is praising him though, even the babies are. And so the actual verse says, but when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. So basically that kind of stuck out to me because of something that I heard one of y'all say. And so yeah, I guess that means like everybody was crying out, or like the innocent were crying out. But there was also like another meaning that I kind of connected to it. So babies, babies, one of the first things that they do is obviously breathe, and they're like, yeah, that's how you breathe. And so but we in English have the word Yahweh, and it means like God or something like that.
That's God's name.
Yeah, God's name, yeah. And so the Hebrew language is actually where we get that. But in the Hebrew language, if you didn't know this, there are no vowels. So that word Yahweh is just YHWH. And so you might be like, how do you say that then? But the way you actually say Yahweh in Hebrew is, it's just breathing. So the first thing that you do when you're a child is praise God.
All right. And the verse says, out of the mouth of infants and nursing babes, you have prepared praise. So when we're breathing, I like that. That was good. You came up with that. So that's a, so you got it right. So when we're taking this, we're reading all this chapter, putting all these pieces together, we cannot go any other place. We're headed to one place. Where's Jesus going? Heaven. How does he get headed to? That's right. On the
cross.
That's right. So this whole chapter is taking us to the cross. Now it's talking about everybody's angry. Some are praising, some are angry, some don't know what to do, but it is marching steadily to the cross. So we're going to see you tomorrow in chapter number 22. See you then.
Bye.